everybody. So just to let you know in advance, this video might be a little bit longer, but that's okay, right? So today is more about our body's waste, okay? And this one is about, is your waste, let's say in the GI tract, in the intestine, getting sort of stuck, and is it very sluggish? So I have a question for you. Do you have smelly gas, number one? And when you poop, is it smelly? Okay, so you might notice it's not always like that. You might notice that it's like that with certain things that you eat, right? It could be a common thing for you, right? Also, do you have bad breath? So first off, I'm going to tackle the lower end of it, okay? It's all in there, but I'm going to try not to confuse you here. So when there is smelly gas and there is smelly poop, that is said to be fermentation in the gut, okay? So it can be in the large intestine, it can even be in the smaller intestine. So when there is fermentation, fermentation means that it's basically food rotting, right? So you smell smelly gas and you're like, ugh, because that's the smell of rotting food. So fermentation can either be an excess of kapha, so an excess of mucus, so that mucosal lining in the large intestine, let's say, has thickened up, and that can be from eating a lot of very slower foods. So red meats, it can be from a lot of sweets, dairies, it can also be from a lot of wheat and bread and preservatives too. So like foods that are not essentially foods, right? And so it just kind of gums up and everything gets stuck. So now we kind of have all of this sort of trapped waste in there, and then it starts to ferment. So when it starts to ferment, you think about fermented foods, they're more acidy, they're bubbly, right? So it's almost like that heat is being trapped, okay? And so it's something that we really want to tackle right away. If you have smelly gas, like every time you fart, and it's a very, very common thing, there's a lot of sluggishness happening there. There is a lot of rotting happening in the intestines, and we don't want that. The bad bacteria feed off that. They love it. But it's almost, you're thinking, oh, there's this waste in my body that I need to expel. And yes, you do. So what are some things that you do? So I'm going to go and give you a little bit about my experience, okay? And so for me, my constitution is more of a pitta, a fire energy. And that is a good thing because fire transforms, fire helps to move things. However, part of my constitution is also a kapha, so it's also earth and water. And earth and water tends to be slower, tends to hold on to things. So it's a little bit tricky for myself because I don't want too much heat because then that can aggravate my pitta, my heat. And I don't want too much sweet because it's balancing for pitta, but it can aggravate the kapha. So when I get smelly gas or smelly poop, things like that, I notice that's when, particularly for me, is when I'm eating more meat, whether it's red, whether it's white, and I also notice it with eggs, okay? And so those things aren't digesting properly in my system. So I may have an issue with malabsorption or a weaker metabolism. My body isn't able to metabolize proteins as well, okay? And so that can be an issue with my liver. So I need to flush the liver. And you might be like, whoa, back up the phone here. But all I'm saying here is that when we have that fermentation going on in the intestines, we need to remove it. We need to flush it. So I need to do things that bring heat because all of that stagnation, all of that stuckness in the lower intestine, in the small intestine, it needs to get pushed through. It needs to get transformed into poop, right? So that it comes out. So I'm not going to eat more meat, more dairy, things that will create that stuckness. I'm also not going to eat fruits because fruits are fermented in themselves. So I don't want to aggravate that fermentation. So bitter is one of the best things that we can do. So for example, I use a little bit of bitter orange peel and I kind of add that into maybe a tea. that can help to sort of flush that out a little bit. Bitters are contracting, okay? And so when things get stuck, they're just sort of like stuck there. And we need the contraction to happen in the stomach and the small intestine so that it can push things through and push things down, okay? Something quick that I often do, and that is probably not the best thing, but it really does help my system, is I have some coffee. Coffee is bitter, but coffee is very it's very drying, but it's also contracting. So it helps to push things through. It's a quicker fix for me to kind of release that extra stagnation that's happening in the lower intestine. And it might not be the best thing. However, I know that for myself, I don't go more in the destructive vata, more air stage. So my kapha needs that little bit of oomph to get it out. And then I take care of not having too much fire and not having too much fire through mint tea. Okay? Now, you might have heard all of that and been like, what the heck? And that's okay. That's okay. Don't worry about it. If you have any questions, post them in there. Let me know, okay? I'm only talking about the lower end. I'm only talking about stinky farts and poop for now. I know it's gross. I'm not going to go to the breath portion because that's a different thing. That really is a different thing. So we don't want the waste down in there. So let me know if you guys are experiencing this. And you might even notice that with eating what you're eating on this challenge, you might even notice that you experience less of that, right? Because there are some of you who have said, I'm experiencing less gas, less bloating, right? And so when there's gas and bloating, that can be certainly from fermentation in the gut, because we have the heaviness of what's stagnant in the gut. So we have the earth, the water. We have that acid, right? And when acid kind of bubbles, acid is a gas. So it creates a bloat action, right? So we need to kind of push that through. So again, with some bitters, if you're like, what's a bitter? Anything green, lots of green foods, okay? If you have more of that kapha, you might be able to do raw, and you'll know. If you can do raw, you'll know it. If you can't, kaphas tend to be able to do more raw, pittas as well. But if you know that you can't and raw aggravates you and creates more bloating, then just simply steam those vegetables, steam those greens, okay? Not broccoli and cauliflower or cabbage. They tend to be a little bit more of that air. So they might create more expansion, and you don't want that. You want more kind of contraction. So bitter, things that are very bitter, dandelion, you can use asparagus, you can use Brussels sprouts. I'm just trying to think of like simpler things, that you guys might need. And also you need heat, okay? So you need the bitter, the contract, and you need the heat to transform it into actual waste. And so what can you use for heat? Cumin is a nice spice that you can use for heat. Very, very heating, cumin. Garlic is super potent. Garlic is said to be a whole other medicinal spice that should only be used for medicine, not for in your everyday cooking. Just funny little FYI. But yeah, so if you use that, then you might be able to release it. And if you have any other questions though, and I'm almost on 9 minutes now, so sorry, I told you it was gonna be a little long. If you have any other questions on any of it though, just let me know. And that's the last one that I'm going to talk about today as far as waste goes. Over the next few days, it will be about different foods, specific foods, and sort of what's happening in the body, what are the qualities of these foods, and all of that. And then I'm also going to talk about food combining. So have an awesome day, everyone. See you later. Hopefully taking up 9 minutes and 30 seconds of your time is not too much. Okay, bye.